tribal beliefs. It's also where we actually revert to, if you will, when we are stressed. Anybody ever been stressed in your life? Okay. So we revert back to what we think is, we revert back, let me repeat that. We revert back to what we find familiar and comfortable, right? And perhaps that's something that we have witnessed in our life, or that, we've seen it exampled, we tend to mirror behaviors, okay? So when we're working with a himsa, which is the first Yama, it's about consideration to others. And it's about, remember what I told you? It is about being aggressively aware and conscious. Aggressively aware and conscious, yes.
Do you need, if we're stressed, does this mean that to fix our stress, we need to go back to something we know familiar?
No, on the contrary, you react to the stress by doing something that is very natural to you, right? You go back to that old familiar, if you will. But that old familiar is not always the best thing for us. And it is not always going to make our life grander and more beautiful and more spectacular, and that's really what we want to choose. We want to choose something that's going to make our life better. And yoga tells us that in order for us to be able to do that, our first chakra needs to be balanced, and we need to act with ahimsa. Yama number 1. That means that you've got to be aggressively conscious and aware of what you're feeling, what you're saying, what you're thinking, what you're doing, and what you're actioning. Okay? And we have to, if we're going to be on this journey to be a better me, the best version of yourself you can possibly be, you must be aggressively aware of what are you thinking. Like right now, Kai is not with me. Yes or no? Yeah, well, except you were going like this, right? And so we don't even know when we're doing that. Example, we don't even know when we're doing that. Unless we are consciously, aggressively aware. And aggressive, what does aggressive mean, guys? How would you explain if somebody asked you, what does aggressive mean? Yeah.
Forceful.
Exactly. Forceful. And we need to be on our toes, yes? Would you agree that aggressive means being on your toes, being all there? Yeah? Okay. Example of what happens when you allow stress and the critical voice inside your head to take you over. By not being aggressively aware, by not actually having that chakra in balance, and by not acting in ahimsa. Give you an example. This morning, and I loved my husband, Margot, you know my husband, so it's funny. But anyway, so what happens is, I teach in the morning here at 6 o'clock. So in order for me to get here and get everything ready, I leave the house at 20 till. I mean, I'm driving out, I've got it calculated. I'm driving out at 20 till. So I'm running around the house, I'm going like, 5 minutes, we got 5 minutes, and I'm this like little alarm going like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, we're driving out in 2 minutes, right? And we went out to the garage, and we're still moving in, so if my husband is in the driveway, my car doesn't have a good turn radius, so he's got to be out of the driveway, otherwise I'm going to bash right into him, but as it is, I'm bashing into the trees on the other side. So he's got to be out, and his challenge has always been being on time, so he's got to be out. So this morning, we get out there, I start to get in the car, and I look at him and I go, okay, garage is going up now. you need to be in your car and you need to be moving, right? And he looked at me and he looked at me and he goes, yeah, so what? I looked at him, I stopped. I looked at him and I go, I'm sorry. Was that really necessary? And he just looked. And he goes, I wasn't aggressively aware. I said, ahimsa, thank you. Let's get out and let's move. And he, later on when we got here, because he always comes in his own car, everybody wants to know why we drive separate cars. Well, that's because we got things to do after we leave. As we're walking down, he looks at me and he says, I'm sorry, he says, because I wasn't in awareness. I made a mistake and could have ruined this relationship that we worked so hard 36 years to keep. Being in that space, do you see when we're in that aggressive space, no matter how stressed we are, when we're in ahimsa, everything is in balance. That first chakra is in balance. You're not hurting anybody else's feeling. You're not acting out of reaction. You are being proactive. Life is going to try to knock you down, but if you are reactionary, you will fail. Not that failing is wrong, but how many times is it going to take for life to knock you down before you get the message? Make sense? So with this learning, remember, I want to keep coming back because some of you guys are looking at me going like, ay, this lady. But remember, these messages that I'm giving you were for the well-to-do. When they followed them, they were very well-to-do and they stayed well-to-do. Yes, it means that you've got to be awake. Yes, it means that you've got to be aggressive in your actions. Yes, it means you've got to be proactive. Yes, sometimes I wish I could just relax, but I do relax and I go, okay, my humanness is showing. It's okay to say that. It's okay to let your humanness show. But do you see how when we are aggressively aware, I could have, think about this, if I were not in ahimsa, not aggressively aware, what could I have done? Snapped at him, said, right? Said, right? And what would that have done? Another reaction. A chain reaction, chain reaction, chain reaction, chain reaction. And isn't that sometimes how our life goes? It's like, damn, I just got out of this one and another one knocks me down. Damn, I just got out of... And it's the first chakra calling to you, saying, wait a minute, people. You're out of balance in that first chakra. That means come back in, know that your chakra's out of balance, which is, taking a look at your surroundings, and come back and say, wait a minute, am I being reactionary? Am I going back to the familiar acting? Or am I being aggressively aware? Make sense? You have a choice. You do have a choice. You can go back to your old ways, but make sure you don't blame it on anybody. Oh, it's because the moment that you begin to justify, defend, rationalize, you will never change. And yoga tells us that. That which you will not, the 3 A's, write this down. The 3 A's, that which you will not, the 3 A's are critically important for the rest of your life. That which you will not be aware of, so number 1 is awareness.
What section is this?
Notes. The first one, make sure you write today's date. Notes. Because I'm looking for dates when I pick up your journals. Make sure you write today's date. What's today's date, guys? The 13th. So, the first of the 3 A's is awareness. You cannot begin to change anything until you are, number 1, aware. And number 2, acceptance. You can't move to step 3 or the third A until you accept it. And if you are rationalizing, explaining, defending, you are not accepting. You are not accepting. Does that make sense? And that sucks the big one. It really does. Because when somebody says, well, the moment you start with well, you are defending, you are justifying, you are rationalizing, you are stuck in acceptance, and more than likely you cannot go to 3, which is action. Take the action necessary to change that. Now, this morning, when that happened, I was in awareness. I accepted what he said. And I just asked, was that necessary? That was the action. Was that really necessary? And I didn't give him an attitude exactly as I'm saying it right now. I just asked him so that I could bring him into awareness. Is that really necessary? You see, the other thing that we tend to use a lot is how many times have you said to somebody, that doesn't help me? Yes or no?
Yes.
That doesn't help me. Well, what do you want the person to do once you say that? I mean, that's kind of like taking a one of those stun guns and shooting at them. It's like, okay, that doesn't help me. Okay, so what do we do? So what am I going to do? So you stun somebody, right? Instead, tell them what you want. So it would be really beneficial if you could, and then tell them what you want. You see, we do that to children. How many of you guys have children? And we say that to the kids, that's not to do, that's not how to do it, that's not what you do, that's not. And you need to stop, and you need to say, it would be much more helpful. And then they'll ask you, what? And then you explain. If you handed the plate to mom instead of throwing the plate at mom, right? Or whatever it is, right? That can only happen if you are in ahimsa and in balance with your chakra number 1. Does that make sense? Yes? Yes. Cool. So, besides the fact that you're going to answer the 3 things, the 3 questions on introduction, you need to aggressively, between now and the next time I see you, aggressively practice ahimsa. Can you do that for me?
Yes.
And if you want to write it down in your journal, I enjoy reading some of those stories. So put it in there, ahimsa. This is how I practiced ahimsa. When you write it down, you actually take action to make it yours, to make something permanent. Practice makes permanent. Right? The more you practice ahimsa, the more permanent it gets. Yes? All right, let's get up in Asasana.